Welcome again to Whiskey Congress. I'm coming at you from Frederick, Maryland again. Steve is in Cleveland. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Doing all right. Doing all right. I'm not in my favorite hotel chain that I won't badmouth, but or I will, but not identify.
Right. You
But
kind of downgraded this week a little bit.
I did downgrade.
Pre-show conversation.
Yes. So anyway, we left off last time and we didn't get to OJ, and you know that was killing me.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a legitimate reason to talk about OJ. I teased you a little bit about your obsession with the whole situation and the dynamic, which it's definitely interesting. Part of my thing is I said, I was right on the cusp in terms of age when that happened. I think I was like 13 or 14, and I've heard it I just heard it beat up so much when it was happening after, and it's been something that has been talked about, and I think being a little bit younger, a little bit rebellious, after a while you're just kind of like, okay, OJ, whatever, and then there's the jokes, and then as I kind of have grown into a more active and self-aware and conscious person, the importance of what happened with the initial OJ trial has kind of become more relevant to me. And then, the fact that he's been paroled, I think is pretty interesting, just how it fits in our current media and social media driven world and dynamic. So I think there's definitely something to talk about here. So I will not tease you about
this time. Well, I mean, so first of all, the whole thing about him getting paroled, you sent me a text that said OJ victim, or maybe you didn't send me a text. I read a headline. Sorry.
No. I sent you a text. I sent you a text that said the victim in this crime was going to bat for OJ, and this is just something along those lines.
Right.
The victim is actually speaking on behalf of OJ.
Prior to that, I had read a headline that said OJ victim wants him paroled, and it took me a minute to process that because I know the Goldman family and the Simpson and the Brown family don't, but realistically, from a legal standpoint, I think
that right there.
What?
That right there. That's so. That idea that you can, and this isn't an attack on you.
Go ahead.
There were a lot of people from that. You're a half a generation ahead of me or whatever, 10 years older, who thought along that same line. Wait a minute, the victim were Nicole. Okay, yeah, they were the victims, but. You have to be able to see that this crime is completely separate from that, right?
Sure.
So I mean, for me, as soon as that rolled across the screen, I never the thought of Nicole Brown Simpson or Ronald Goldman never popped in my mind.
So let me ask this: if OJ had not been tried for murder and acquitted, and he commits the exact same acts, which basically, right, he and some friends went to a hotel room in Vegas to reclaim memorabilia he believed was rightfully his. One of the friends had a gun, and that friend was pressured basically into, if you roll on OJ, you walk. If you don't, we're going to throw the book at you. And they hit OJ for this crime really hard. Now, not trying to be an OJ sympathizer, but if everything else is the same except he's never ducked a murder rap, do you think he gets prison time, significant prison time? How does that change things?
If it wasn't, if let's say it was still OJ, but OJ had never killed Nicole, or had, Nicole Brown Simpson was still alive, and Ronald Goldman was still alive, and there was no murder trial of century. But let's just say OJ fell on hard times. He, gets a divorce from Nicole, as opposed to she ends up murdered, and he just falls on hard times, and he goes to get his stuff back. Even if he had like a let's say he had a DUI previously.
Okay.
Like so.
A
So he
minor
had a DUI, right,
transgression.
Like he had a DUI and maybe a disorderly conduct for being drunk outside of a bar. Over the span of from 1995 until 2007. Right.
Okay.
I honestly think, and just based off of experience, he probably gets a slap on the wrist. If he does jail time, it's no more than, whatever
a few months.
The minimum is. Right, whatever the minimum is, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. He does that, or he gets some sort of, house arrest, or, some sort of, commuted sentence with community service and, the normal kind of skate. And not because he's a celebrity, but, I mean, if you look at this crime, especially in Las Vegas, oh my God, in Las Vegas, that's a joke of a crime, so I think there's plenty of people out there who have all but said that they intentionally threw the book at him, he wasn't going to walk on their watch. There were plenty of people who wanted to see this happen, who were, waiting for OJ to slip up again, and as soon as he did, they were just pouncing on the fact that, somebody was finally going to get him and he was going to pay for what he had done. I don't think that is, to me, that's not justice for Nicole Brown Simpson or Ronald Goldman. You can't tell me that it is, that, you're putting this guy in jail for a crime that, has the potential for this type of sentence, but I don't know. To me, that's not justice. That seems like a cheap, roundabout way of getting it. And then
in sports, it would be called a makeup call, right?
Exactly. It's a bullshit makeup call after the fact, and he's still out. He's still probably going to get out. Barring he does something crazy and stupid. So I don't. Yeah, so to the original question, if everything were the same except for the murder of those two, then no, he doesn't serve that amount of time. This isn't even an issue. He probably doesn't do any jail time. Everybody gets a slap on the wrist and it goes away. But because he was OJ, his star kind of hurt him in this instance, and because of what previously happened, then yes, he got a pretty aggressive sentence for it.
I completely agree. I know I've said this to you, but let me just say again on the record, I've taken a lot of heat from people because in 1995, when the verdict was about to come out, and since then, I've said that the jury in the OJ trial did the right thing. Now, I've learned a lot more since then. At the time, I didn't have nearly the inside information that I have now from the ESPN 30 for 30 5-part special, which really dug in. And I don't want to use the FX series as fact because that's a based on real life thing. But the jury in the criminal trial did the right thing, in my opinion. There was clear evidence of police misconduct, and the whole case revolved around blood evidence and police testimony, and both of those things were thoroughly discredited. So anyway, in 1995, I said the jury did the right thing, and I say it to this day even with more conviction. And the instant response I always get is, "You think you didn't do it?" I'm like, all right, you're not listening to my words. I do. If you ask me to place money on it, I'll strongly bet that he did it, especially with what I know now. But if I'm in that jury box, I'm saying that there is definitely reasonable doubt. And I also think the jury in the civil case did the right thing because the preponderance of evidence definitely suggested that he did.
Right. The burden of proof in a civil trial like that is a lot. The burden is a lot less. The way things shook out makes sense from a legal standpoint. The prosecution absolutely fumbled that case from beginning to end. They've all but admitted it. They made a lot of mistakes. It's hard to figure out, was it because Christopher Darden was, kind of so awestruck by Johnny Cochran and their previous relationship? Was Marcia Clark in too deep, where she didn't she was not using good lawyering skills because she was just so bloodthirsty to get OJ, and rightfully so. I mean, he had a bad history of spousal abuse. There was enough evidence in theory to be able to convict him, but she allowed herself and her team to get blindsided, time and time again by Johnny Cochran, and they kind of got in their own way. So I think you're right. The criminal jury did the right thing. The civil jury did the right thing. But none of it, at the end of the day, is really justice for the two people that died.
Right.
Now, the one thing I do want to bring up, though, is bring us back to now and his parole. I think that we saw for the first time in a long time our media focused on something that wasn't Trump related, that wasn't politics related, that wasn't partisan, that something that I think normally would have been kind of a firestorm for, some racial tension, and, it would have started some kind of, it would have been easier to start a racial debate sort of conversation. But I think that so many people, whether they were in the media, who they were just excited to not be talking about Trump or the White House, and people just who follow politics and follow entertainment and everything else, were so glad to watch something that had nothing to do with Trump, the White House, politics, a congressman, a senator, a governor. I think it was interesting to see people's level of interest. This was on, every TV that you walk past when you were downtown, going past restaurants and bars. We had it on in my office. We're busy, so we didn't sit there and kick it around, but it definitely caught a little bit of it. And so I just think that that's an interesting sort of shift in how OJ still moves the needle, but how it's so much different now than it was back in the 90s.
I mean, I completely agree with you there, that it is amazing how much that story remains in the public spotlight. I mean, the fact that FX made that series, the fact that ESPN made theirs was not nearly as shocking, but I mean, it's a real spotlight on race in America on so many levels, good and bad.
Well, yeah, it absolutely is, which is funny. So Jay-Z drops a new album a few weeks back, and there's a song on it called "The Story of OJ." Now, we said we were going to talk about it.
Here it comes.
We got around to it. It ended up being harder to actually listen to. Like, you had to subscribe to Tidal, and I ended up subscribing to Tidal, but then we had to wait for it. It was a mess. Anyway, so we never got into an overall album critique. Or actually a critique of the song of The Story of OJ, but I was a little bit disappointed in your response. You said, hey, by the way, I heard The Story of OJ on the Jay-Z's new album. Man, he uses a lot of N-bombs. Right?
I did say that.
That was literally the only thing you said about it. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, yes, he did. And, for our listeners that are not hip-hop fans and aren't Jay-Z fans who haven't heard the song, the long and short, which
we can't play a clip without getting taken off the air. So
right, I would have played it for you, but apparently, Whiskey Congress and Steve and Jim, and when we play music, it moves the world, so they shut us down. Anyway, the story of OJ on the album, it starts out with OJ's line where he says, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." Right, and Jay-Z's response in the song is, okay, right, and then he proceeds to go on to talk about multiple different situations that black people are in, where it really doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what we accomplish. It doesn't matter if we go the OJ route. It doesn't matter if we go the Johnny Cochran route, the Jay-Z route, the Thurgood Marshall route. Like, it doesn't matter. Really what you do at the end of the day, in the eyes of a lot of white people, you're still just going to be a nigger, right? So you can't live to make white people happy. You can't live to dance their dance and sing their song. But at the same time, you can't sit there and try to do the same thing and try to make black people happy or dance their dance or sing their song. At the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you, right? That's really what the song comes down to. And here's a smart way to do it. And he kind of lays out a path for wealth accumulation and how to close the income gap. Right? There's a lot of information in there on how to do it, right? He's not just talking about rich rappers or wannabe rich rappers. He's actually anything. If you listen to the song, those are basic tenets of saving money, investing money, and being patient with money and what not to do with your money. Those are all lessons that anybody with any amount of money can learn. So I think there was a lot more to the song, and my whole point was your deep analysis of the man. There's a lot of N-bombs in this song. One violates our rule of if
no. N-bomb is acceptable,
yes,
N-word is not.
Says who? No, it's not. I'm the fucking black guy. I make the rules, and N-bomb isn't accessible. It's ridiculous.
Right.
How do you even begin to reason that?
My reasoning for that is that N-bomb is not me trying to pretend I'm not saying a word, just like F-bomb is not me trying to pretend I'm not saying a word. N-word is like, okay, well, we can discuss degrees. Truthfully, I'm a little bit on my heels right now because I only heard like 30 seconds of the song when I texted that to you. And I apparently haven't heard. Maybe I didn't. I'm trying to think of where I heard it and how. So I heard the beginning and I went, well, okay, yes, I realized there was a much bigger message being sent, but I didn't hear the whole song apparently because it was that whole message was not something that I picked up. Whether I was just it was in the background or I didn't hear the whole thing, I don't know. So I've no problem with you calling me out on that.
Okay. When you tell me that you have heard the song,
that's a reasonable assumption on your part. I'll own that. I heard the song or a portion of it. I will listen to it again. You're right. I did not discuss the deeper attributes of it with you. Now, I did just send you a text because what caught me was I was walking back into my hotel and there were two white guys singing the song and saying, house nigger, whatever, nigger, still nigger. And I'm listening to those guys talking like, what the fuck is wrong with these guys? And I really didn't want to have a conversation about it. I didn't know what they were talking about, but one of them said, it's in the song. So I think I went to my hotel room and Googled something or whatever and heard, like I said, 30 seconds of it and went, all right, they're doing the whole, I'm just singing the art, I get away with it. And I'm like, okay, you're kind of celebrating it a bit too much, but good for you. So yes, I did not properly assess the song and I was reacting to listening to a little bit. I was leaving the hotel bar. Do I need to spell that out further for you?
No, you don't.
Okay.
You do not need to spell out your probably state of mind leaving.
In fact, bar. I believe I was leaving the hotel bar to escape karaoke. So I'm going to use the karaoke defense.
That's fair.
But anyway,
the question is, were you escaping the bar alone?
I went there because I put up with 10 minutes of karaoke because I was hoping there was some potential there. When there wasn't, I left. And I think you know the answer to your question.
Okay. Well, we never really talked about it, so I just
no, we didn't. But cool.
Give you the opportunity to fill me in.
Yeah, I accept your criticism. I will use the karaoke defense.
Well, listen, I think to a broader point though. There's to a broader point when talking about OJ. There are a lot of people who now, black people especially, who back then got caught up in the emotion of, they're trying to persecute a black man just because he's successful and because she was a white woman. And there was a lot of tension in the country. Like, people seem to think that nothing.
The LA riots
was hunky-dory. Right. I mean, everybody thinks everything was hunky-dory from a race standpoint up until Obama got here or whatever. But no, this country has had a pretty shitty history with race, from its inception. And it really has about tapered off since, I would say, the mid-90s. Right? I mean, it hasn't gotten any better. I don't think it's gotten any worse. I literally think it's the same. You see little dust-ups here, but honestly, what we saw in Ferguson was nothing compared to the LA riots in the 90s. Nothing. So, what we saw in Baltimore was devastating, but again, not what we saw in LA. Not what they saw in Boston. Not what they saw, even in Cleveland with the Huff riots, things like that.
And Detroit had that big event that I guess recently had the anniversary of it.
Earlier. Right. I mean, that was a little bit earlier, but still same concept, same idea. So, have race relations gotten any better? Maybe a little. Yeah, I think they have a little bit. They definitely haven't gotten worse, as people on the left and right, especially the pundits, love to go to, right? That's, race relations are so bad, and it's all because Obama said, what if my son was black, or whatever? Or what if my son was Trayvon Martin, or if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon Martin, or whatever. And for some reason, that set race relations back 30 years for white conservatives. It's like, okay, well, that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that up until Obama's election, and I've heard so many people say, he was so divisive, he was so, focused on race and himself, whatever. And really, was he, or did it?
No, I mean, because he got asked questions, right? Like, you had the police officers who, put the guy in handcuffs over
in Boston, in Cambridge.
In Cambridge, right? Like, he was a Harvard professor. He was trying to get into his house, and they ended up putting this guy in handcuffs. And he said the police officers acted stupidly, or they were stupid.
Right.
And all of a sudden, that turned into Obama hates the police, and he, has no respect for the rule of law, and he's a racist, and he's divisive. Then you have the things that happened with Trayvon Martin, where he said if I had a son, he would look like him. That made him racist and divisive. In Ferguson, he sends in Eric Holder to see what the hell is going on, because you literally have what looks like a militarized force in the middle of the streets with, people that, with a dead kid laying in the middle of the street for hours and no good explanation as to what happened. So, the whole thing about Obama being divisive, come on, let's just have a little common sense.
Well, let's talk. I'd like to focus for 2 minutes on the Cambridge situation, because there's a few things about that I don't think have been said or said enough. One, Obama said the Cambridge police acted stupidly. And a lot of people lost their minds, talking about how the professor antagonized, and to a degree he did. But the Cambridge police acted stupidly. They arrested a guy for trying to get into his own fucking house. So,
Jim,
what?
Jim?
Yes.
Okay. You had a situation where you were locked.
Yes,
Jim?
yes. Oh, I was not done, but go ahead.
You had a situation where you were locked out of your house, right?
Yes.
Okay. If the police would have came and given you a hard time, and they said, hey, sir, what are you doing? And you said, trying to get into my house. And they said, well, sir, we didn't need to see some ID. Why do I need to show you ID? This is my house. I live here. Right. Well, let's see some ID. I don't have it. It's locked in my car. I lost my keys. I can't get in my car. Or it's in my house. I stepped out. Whatever. All right, sir. Well, we're going to need you to prove that this is your house. Are you? I can hear the words coming out of your mouth. Are you kidding me? Right now, that exchange, I believe, is very possible and realistic. Would you consider that antagonizing the police?
My point, Steve, was that regardless of what the professor did, Obama's statement was correct. The police acted stupidly.
Well,
whether or not the professor did or didn't.
Well, we can't go. I mean, if the professor is arguing that it's his home and he's trying to get into his home, which anyone would do, if you're locked out and the police come up your initial is, all right, thank goodness. Hey, can you help me out, right? And then if they immediately go on the defensive, like, what are you doing here? We need to see some ID and blah, 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 blah. Like, some people say, oh, yeah, that's just what I want. Like, hey, keeping the neighborhood safe. But if you're trying to get in your house and you're frustrated, then you're going to be a little bit annoyed that the police are asking you to get in your own house.
I'm not. Okay.
Well, what I'm saying is, you said he antagonized the police, and I think that
accusation was made. I didn't say.
I understand.
All right.
I understand that. You said he did, but right. You said he antagonized the police. But
I don't think I said that. I said that accusation was made.
We recorded.
We can exactly.
Point being, though, is whether you said it or the groups of people out there who said it. The point is that like that's the part of the narrative that drives black people and activists insane. That idea of I'm being questioned about trying to get into my own house and I'm being called antagonistic. Right? Like that's the part where where you and I, at least I know that drives me fucking insane. Right? I mean, now this virtually nothing happened. This officer or the professor ended up okay, and there was no physical exchange. He wasn't hurt or anything like that. It could have ended way worse, as we've seen. But I just think that part of saying that he was antagonistic.
Okay,
we're way off the rails.
All right, yes, we are. But so I wanted to say two things about it. One is his statement that the Cambridge police acted stupidly was accurate, regardless of the professor's action, who may have thrown gasoline on the fire, may not have. I don't know. And I do know he was coming back from a long trip, and I know what I'm like after flying for 15 hours. But part A is he did make an accurate statement saying the police acted foolishly or stupidly because they did. But more importantly, what did he do after that? He got the two people involved, the cop and the professor, and had a beer summit. And I think that was one of the coolest things a president has ever done. Let's all three sit down, let's have a beer, and let's talk like adults and make this right.
It was crazy, though. Like, Obama got criticism for that. Like, people
I know.
criticized, like, let's have a beer summit. Like, okay, he tried to solve a problem between two people in the country that were having a...
He tried to end division. He tried to make a common man, normal person, let's sit down, let's talk, let's have a beer moment, and he got attacked for being divisive for doing that. So that's
it's still like Sean Hannity goes to the beer summit thing all the time, and I'm just like, I still don't understand why that's a bad thing, right? I mean, and I guess
you know exactly why it's a bad thing.
I do know. It's just like, come on, can we like? Is it that important to just be a dick to the other side that we can find no common ground under any circumstances, no matter what? Like, that's the frustrating part. But we've derailed into politics a little bit more than I think we wanted to. The whole point of it was to say that, this time around with OJ, you just didn't see the same sort of the racial aspects and the racial components. I know there were some, old school black writers who were trying to keep it alive a little bit, by constantly going back to what happened in the 90s. For me, and I think, most probably black people my age are just like, listen, I mean, if you've been paying attention, I think what the 30 for 30 that ESPN did was just so revealing in terms of just the preponderance of the evidence, and then how the prosecution just completely fucked it up. Right? I mean, how they just completely
the two things about that stick with me are, I will never be able to erase the autopsy photo of Nicole Simpson out of my head. That was just so stark. But also, there's a video of the police gathering evidence, and they're literally dragging a blanket around Nicole Simpson's backyard that's covered in blood. And I'm like, how the fuck?
What are you doing?
Yeah,
I mean, back then that wasn't acceptable practice.
It was just shocking to see how sloppy they were, and to see the video of that, and knowing the jury saw the video of that. What a bunch of terrible.
So I mean, I think that's where you see kind of like I think the common well, I can't even say the common because I don't know. But I think the one thing that we can say is that there are more people leaning, saying, you know what, OJ probably did it, but the prosecution fucked up and they lost the case. And I think the interesting thing is the whole thing with this most recent crime, that's the part where I don't have a good feel for what people are thinking, what the masses say, what the majority is saying, because I don't know. I think, like, do people think that he should be kept in jail longer? I did read that. I did see that on social media, people saying that, he wasn't answering the questions the right way, and he was talking too much, and it was all about him, and he doesn't get it, and he shouldn't be let out. For this particular crime, I just don't know if you really need to be Kaiser Sose to get out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, even the people that he stole from, and I was air quoting that, said that this is, ridiculous. All right, I will talk OJ for hours and hours.
Right.
But
so let's talk about if OJ were in Tennessee, and so he's been paroled, and he was due out October 1st, right? So the parole went through, and they granted it to him. So he's due out October 1st. If OJ were in Tennessee and White County specifically, OJ could get out 30 days earlier. Do you know how?
Because you told me, I do.
Well, don't ruin it for all the kiddies.
Okay.
If OJ were in White County, Tennessee, he could get a vasectomy and get out 30 days early.
I'm not going to go literal on you because he's 70 years old, but
right, and you have to wonder if he's already had that. So I don't think that's an option for him. Then there's that. But that 30 days is important, especially at 70. It may be worth lying and saying, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's true. You're really not giving up much.
Right, like what's the worst that can happen? You're 70 years old. But I mean, you get out 30 days earlier.
Tell the story. From the in White County, Tennessee, they proposed or they actually implemented. I don't know because you brought this. You told me
they actually implemented. There are about 70 people on the wait list to have this done. Something like 38 men and 33 women, or something along those lines. Are waiting, so you can either have a vasectomy done if you're a male, or you can have an implant
or tubal ligation, right?
Well, no, I don't think they said an implant, so
okay.
I don't think they're like tying tubes or whatever. I think it's an implant that prevents pregnancy for a certain period of time.
I think that up to 3 years is the medical
they
thing.
Range anywhere from 3 to 5 years. They range, but. Point being is this issue kind of swings an interesting double-edged sword, because on the one hand, for the most part, you look at it as, well, they're criminals. Should they really be reproducing? Probably not. If they have a criminal record, how are they going to be able to afford to take care of additional children? All the sort of things that are thrown out there I have to assume that have been thrown out there to justify something like this. On the other hand, there's a much darker, heavier component to this. We're talking about White County, Tennessee. Right? I mean, there couldn't be a more
ironically named, right?
There really could not be a more apropos name for this county, right? It's White County, Tennessee. We're south of the Mason-Dixon line. Tennessee is a Voting Rights Act state where the Supreme Court has to approve anything they do if they change anything that deals with voting, because they have a history of doing some pretty heavy racist shit when it comes to voting rights, right? And you have a disproportionate number of black people that end up in county jail than white people and anybody else. I guarantee you, I won't guarantee. I am willing to bet that if you go into Tennessee county jails, you will find a number of really shitty cases that had people in jail, right? And so the argument could be is you throw people in jail who you don't like, right? and that being, poor blacks. And so if they're in jail disproportionately compared to everyone else, and then you say, hey, if you want to get out of jail, then we will eliminate your ability to reproduce, right? And if you spin that forward and extrapolate it a little bit, I mean, that's essentially a really Mr. Rogers type of genocide.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Right. I mean, and I know it sounds
allow me to crystallize a thought. It's fucked up.
Right. So artistic. But yeah, I mean that's what we're talking about here. So the ACLU is not happy. They've already. I think they just filed a motion. I don't even know if they wrote anything on it other than motion and no and fuck. We'll fill out the rest later. Which may not meet the court standards, but still, point taken. The ACLU is already all over this, and even the prosecutor, which this is interesting, even the prosecutor in that county is very uncomfortable with it, and they haven't come out and flat out, spoken out against it, because this is something that was, allowed by the judge. So it's not like this is just passing through with nobody really doing anything about it, people kind of mocking it, but no one fighting it. Like, it is being fought, and I think it needs to be fought, because this is very dangerous. Like, if this were to become the norm or the standard, I mean, now you're talking about the elimination of people, right?
The one thing that I'm gonna say is it's a voluntary thing. Now, I'm not saying it's not fucked up, because it's totally fucked up, but it's if you do this, you get this. And from a legal standpoint, will that complicate things? Because it's not a...
No, because of this, you're a person in a position of power, offering someone I get what you're saying. It's free choice, it's free will, but it's really not, because...
It's disgusting to me to think that you're going to try to take someone who is so desperate that they will say, for 30 days of my freedom, I will change my functional... my functions as a human being. That's horrifying.
Right.
But yet, because it's a choice,
but I mean, we're talking. I mean, this is government level extortion. Right?
Okay. I agree. That's a good way to say it.
You can say it's a choice, but I mean, how they paint the picture, how they present it to you. I mean, do they just slide a pamphlet into the cell, or do they gather everybody around and then they lay out like, well, when you get out, this is what you're going to face, and you haven't seen a woman in 18 months, and you don't know, and what if you don't have money to buy a condom, and the next thing you know, bing, you got a baby, and you got a record, you're not going to be able to take care of her, you probably shouldn't do that. Instead of risking all that, we'll give you a vasectomy, you get out earlier, and you're good to go.
So to me, it's two things that there are certain people who probably want that done anyway, and for them it's a free pass. But the other people will be the most desperate of the desperate, and to take advantage of them is the part that I call disgusting.
Right, and and the other thing too is, I mean, what are there age restrictions on this? What if people are young? I mean, if you got a 21, 22-year-old, they do 3-6 months in county or whatever, for something stupid, and maybe they're able to get out, turn their life around.
Right.
It's something where they can go and find a trade and be a plumber or an electrician or a mechanic, because I know it seems rare, but it does happen a lot more often than you think. The gym that I work out in is filled with a lot of pretty hardcore lifters with some pretty shitty past, but they're all pretty productive people, and relatively good guys for the most part, usually. But I work out with a number of guys with felonies on their records who have been to prison for various crimes, paid a lot of money to lawyers, and those guys now, they work in construction, they're electricians, they're plumbers, they're good guys, they haven't done anything wrong in years, They're pretty straight and narrow, and they're getting married. They have kids. They're able to do that because they were young and they did something stupid that landed them in jail for a little bit. I mean, I think that there needs to be, as much as we need to curb this, trend of, people having kids young and not being married and not being able to take care of them. Yes, I agree. That is something that we have to fix. We have to bring the family unit, we have to bring the family unit back together, especially in inner city communities, just because it's important to have a family. I don't care if it's gay or straight or whatever, but to have multiple people there to support a child or children as they grow. I don't think anyone is going to argue that. I think one person raising a child or two or three or however many on their own is very difficult, and it impacts a kid's ability to develop. At least it puts additional obstacles in front of that kid that they may not have if there's another parent there to share the load. I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that. The question is, though, how do we do it without also committing fucking genocide? That's my question.
All right, I'm refraining from quoting Chris Rock. You're welcome. All right, now I'm not going to refrain. You don't need a man to raise your baby. Shut the fuck up. You can probably drive a car with your feet. It doesn't make it a good fucking idea. Chris Rock quote from Jim. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, all right. No, but I think the story is very underreported, and it just feels ugly. Like, I mean, even if you can, was that?
No, I said it just feels dirty. It feels dirty, and I don't I'm not comfortable with that at all. I mean, I think as much as I have I don't want to get into it, but I have a family member who, I feel that maybe should have stopped having kids at a certain point, and they did not. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but I don't think that it's the role of the government to step in and say, "And you're done," right?
Or if you do this, we will give you this carrot.
Right. Like it's just like, well, as it's like basically saying like, hey, because my biggest concern is everything I just said, but also my big concern is if you got somebody in jail who didn't do a crime, right? They're in there wrong, they were convicted wrongly, they're innocent, whatever, or they were on the very outskirts of a crime, right? Like they were in the car and so-and-so had a bag of weed or cocaine or whatever, they didn't know it was there, or, they're driving and the buddy had it on them and the police say, well, it's your car, so it's yours. In that situation, and that person says, I can't do another day in here, the faster you get me out the better, fine, I'll have the vasectomy done to get out. Like, that's the person I truly feel for. Whether they're innocent or on the periphery of a crime that they didn't commit, and they would. You all right?
I'm good. I'm pouring wine.
Okay. All right. Because it literally sounded like your head hit the desk. So
no, that was a bottle of wine hitting the desk because I unsmoothly tried to lower it away from the microphone. Thank you, though. Sorry. Are you drinking?
Actually, I am. I'm in my home, so of course there's plenty available. Tonight I am actually consuming the Aran, spelled ARRAN. It's a 14-year single malt Scotch. Very tasty. I'm a big fan of the single malts. I'm a big fan of the bourbon. I'm a big fan of the blends. I like all of it. I like the whiskey. What can I say?
I'm with you. You know what?
The name of the show is Whiskey Congress.
Yeah, exactly. One of us
has to hold true to the name.
Well, tonight I'm drinking red wine because I have to work early tomorrow.
That makes so much sense.
Well, so totally derailing the conversation, but when I was out buying my bottle of wine, the liquor store I walked into had an unpeated Islay Scotch. And I don't know why you would do that, but I'm curious. And I've frozen you, so you obviously don't know why you have an unpeated.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. What did you say?
There was an Islay Scotch. I should have taken a picture of the bottle, but it was an Islay Scotch that had it was unpeated.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know why. I mean, the reason I love Islay Scotch is because of the peat. So.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, and most people who drink Islay Scotch is for the peat, absolutely. But, I mean, I think that, you know, we live in a time where, I mean, Scotch is booming. I mean, you know, we've talked about our interactions with Tom Licks and the CEO and founder of Cleveland Whiskey and what they do and why it's important what they do, because there's a high demand for bourbon. And so they figured out a way to make it and make it quickly to get it out. And because of that demand, you're seeing, you know, these places where you used to be able to get an 18-year Talisker for under $70. Well, now, you know, an 18-year Talisker is going to run you $100, $120. And the reason why that is because of demand out of Asian markets, demand out of Indian markets. You know, even parts of Africa that are starting to develop a higher middle class are wanting different types of whiskey. So, you know, your different Islay distilleries are looking at this and saying, okay, normally we just churn out peat. But maybe it's worth it to try something different. It's not going to be aged for as long. We're not going to have as much of it. If it sucks and nobody likes it, then nobody will remember it in, you know, a couple of years. But if it's a thing, then maybe it's something that we could try. So, I mean, I think they're just trying, like, a lot of these places are trying to diversify and get a surge in buying while we wait for your traditional 10, 14, 15, 18, 21 years to age. You know, they need something to kind of fill the gaps.
Okay, you know, it was not a cheap bottle. If I get back there before I head out of town, I'll look for it and see if it was like $85 a bottle, so I didn't buy it on a whim. But I've never seen an Islay Scotch that bragged about lack of peat, and I know I derailed the conversation, but
you did, you really did.
I did, but it was to talk about whiskey, so you can't get too mad about that.
No. I mean, I can, because I can get mad about anything.
Yeah, you do have that Hulk mode, yes. All right, so I want to talk to you about a couple other sort of pop culture things, but before I do that, what's that?
Oh, okay.
So John McCain gave a speech on the Senate floor today that I thought was a pretty good speech, actually a very good speech. I was going to suggest we tack it on to the end of the show, but then I listened to it, and it's a 15-minute speech, and really 2 minutes of it were the ones that I wanted to focus on. The biggest one I wanted to focus on, because it came out today, is how will the right-wing media react? Because he flat out challenged or called out, you know, talk radio and those people who talk politics that aren't trying to make things better, a group that I would not consider us part of. And I think he said the hell with them, which on the Senate floor is big words. And so I listened to, is it Steele and Unger? Michael Steele has that show on POTUS 124 Sirius.
Yeah, Michael Steele and
Steele and
Unger, you're right.
All right. And so they were just glowing about the speech before I heard it. And people were calling in saying, I'm going to play that for everybody. And, you know, I'm a liberal, but I thought that was amazing. And I listened to it, and I thought it was a good speech. And and people who've listened to us long enough know, I'm something of a John McCain fan. Don't necessarily agree with him on a lot of things, but I think he's an honest guy. I flat out admire how he handled some things during his campaign when that one woman came out and said, you know, I don't trust Obama, he's an Arab. And he said in front of a crowd, no ma'am, he's a good family man. We happen to disagree on some things, but, you know, knock that shit off. And I always, I respect and to some degree admire John McCain. And the fact that he's coming back from being treated for brain cancer and lands on the floor of the Senate and gave that speech, I give him credit for. And I'll be curious to see how the Wilcows and Levins of the world respond to this, because what he said was all about do what's right for your constituents, but he specifically attacked political, radio shows. He didn't name anybody, but I don't see how they can avoid that. Was that?
That's what I'll say. They're going to ignore it, right? They're just going to flat out ignore it. This is what both sides do. Someone presents something to you that's factual, or presents something that's against you that you can't necessarily disprove, or if you thought it, you would look really bad doing so, you ignore it. So I'm assuming that the will calls and the Levins, like, if they didn't talk about it today, they're not going to talk about it tomorrow. McCain his speech was early enough in the day where it would have caught the later show. Steel and Unger is a very centered show. I think they actually lean a little bit more left than even they would believe. I think, Michael Steele is kind of at battle within himself, with his former position as chairman of the Republican Party, and then seeing what the Republican Party is now, and the fact that Michael Steele has common sense.
Yeah, he does.
And then Rick Unger is a Democrat and is who has an interesting background, coming from Hollywood and producing movies to inserting himself into politics. So, it still leans a little further left than I think they would like to admit.
Isn't he from Youngstown?
What?
Isn't Rick Unger from Youngstown?
You know what?
I think he is.
I believe he might be from Warren, Ohio. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
No, he's from Youngstown. He is from Youngstown.
From your neck of the woods.
Right. Yeah, definitely from my neck of the woods. Which is interesting because Youngstown's a weird place. Trump just gave a speech there tonight. Actually, a big rally speech, a big "Make America Great Again." Beating up on Obamacare, praising the Senate for their vote, which McCain was talking about. Speaking of the speech that you were just talking about. Trump doing his thing, like he loves rallies, he loves to take it back to the campaign trail. He definitely reminds you of a 80s hair band guy doing concerts in the late 2000s, saying, I just want to go back to the glory days, the campaign days.
Play Pour Some Sugar on Me again.
Yeah, just, like Brett Michaels staying out there on stage a little too long, taking in the applause, and then, running into the curtain on its way down, and being pretty severely injured because he's an idiot. But yeah, McCain's speech I thought you hit the nail on the head. It was balanced. It made sense. It was kind of a call to common sense and objectivity, and it will go relatively unnoticed by the right. Breitbart's not going to have much to say about it. They may criticize it. Hannity may criticize it. They may flip and call him a traitor, and say, I can even see the people saying, Trump was right about you from the beginning. And I think that there'll definitely be some hypocrisy on both sides, right? Because I think the people on the left are going to be pissed that he even voted for it, even though he said he was just voting to start the conversation about health care in the Senate, and that he would never vote for the Senate bill as it stands, or the House bill as it stands. And, it needs a lot of work, but he wanted to open the conversation now. But I still think he's going to receive a lot of criticism from the left, from the same people who defended him from Donald Trump when Donald Trump says, I don't celebrate people who've been captured, I don't celebrate losers. And that's where, you'll see the hypocrisy on both sides.
This will play out over the next couple of days, and I'll be very...
I don't think it will. I think that you may have a few more hours in the news cycle. It'll go through like late tonight. You may catch some people talking about it in the morning, but his speech will be gone before. I guarantee you, no one's really talking about McCain's speech by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning on Wednesday.
We will see. I hope you're wrong.
Okay. All right, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay. All right. So we're delayed a bit tonight in getting on the phone, because
You know why?
what's that?
Dum 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 dum.
Yes, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
So you're caught up. Where are you on this?
Okay, so we're both big Game of Thrones fans.
Yes.
And I think over the last couple seasons, we should have talked about the show more during our show. But there's no time like the present, so we'll get into it. So if you haven't seen episode 2 of season 7, then this is where you may want to punch out for about a couple minutes or fast forward. So where we are so far, I like it. It's a much faster pace this season so far than especially the last couple seasons, right? We're just seeing more happen. I do want to go back to one thing on the first episode. First episode, Ed Sheeran, the kind of folky pop singer, made an appearance, and there was a lot of criticism saying that was the jump the shark moment and it ruined the show, and how could they do that? First of all, the only reason I knew it was him is because I had just seen him in a commercial for the Today Show or something on one of the network shows, and I drew the connection late. Very late, like I saw it on Twitter, people talking about Ed Sheeran being on the show and how it ruined the show, and then I had to think, which guy was it? And then I realized it was probably the guy singing at the campfire. So honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal. Everybody relax. I mean, I think it feels like it's more people just kind of like bragging that they even know who Ed Sheeran is. And so while they humbly brag about why they know he is, they had to kind of take down Game of Thrones at the same time. Just stop at that. Ed Sheeran was fine. No one noticed. No one cared. And if you did notice, you're a tool. But anyway, so this episode 2, the big talk about this episode was the love scene between the eunuch and
the translator or whatever,
the queen's assistant.
Yes.
And I'm terrible with their names, right? They're not a real language, so I think there's a little bit of a conversation to have there. Some people are saying the scene was too long. Some people having a legitimate question saying, well, he's been castrated, so how did they do it? And so I have to believe that they're saying, all right, your balls were cut off, and not the actual penis,
not the shaft, right?
Right, not the shaft. The balls were removed, so they were still able to do it. Which, yeah, but I don't know. The show has a weird thing with cutting guys' dicks off, right? I mean, there's 3 guys on the show who've had their dicks removed.
Yes,
it's pretty funny.
I didn't know you were going to go there, but yes.
Well, I mean, how could you not, right? Like, there's 3 guys. You have the bald guy, you have Greyjoy, and then you have this guy.
Greyjoy, yes.
Right, I mean, like...
Well, he had his balls cut off, but not his dick. I mean, he had Grey Worm has had his balls cut off, but not his dick, and the entire army of the Unsullied have been through that procedure.
Okay.
So there's 1,000.
Well, yeah, right. So you've got actually a whole army. So there's more than 3. But I mean, 3 people that we talk to or that we interact with, being the Unsullied guy, and then Greyjoy and the bald guy.
The Unsullied guy is Grey Worm, so don't name yourself Grey anything if you want your junk intact, I think is the lesson here.
Right. So I mean, there was a lot of talk about that, and to me, people said, oh, the scene lasted too long, and so you have to wonder if there's like a racial component there, like people comfortable with like non-white people in love scenes, so maybe that is sort of the influence, but I saw a little bit of the conservative Christian, like, oh, they ruined the show with the nudity. It's like, no, they don't.
Okay, if that just now started offending you, what have you been watching?
That's the thing too. Like, what have you been watching? And like, clearly you've never watched anything on HBO.
How about when Jaime Lannister rapes his sister next to their dead child? Did that offend you?
Right. Like, I mean, I feel like at this point in time, there's just a lot of other things you have to have issues with before you complain about the nudity on these shows, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure HBO has a policy where if you want to be in any of their shows for any extended amount of time, you have to sign a waiver that you're gonna get naked, like no matter who you are. Like they would even sign you up and say, Jen.
See, why do you have to go there? I think you're being mean on the set.
No, I'm saying they would say, Jim, you may think that people want to see this, but we think that there's an audience for it. So
maybe I think people do want to see
it. You know that's a lie.
I do. I do.
You know that's a lie.
Yes, I do. Frankly, I don't want to see it. I just have to on a daily basis. But you're still being a dick for no reason.
Yes, I am. So, anyway, aside from eunuch sex, I thought that, I like the progression of the show. There are some things I do have question about. The red lady or the lady in red or whatever her deal is. I'm curious to see where she comes into this. I thought the end, the scene on the water was I feel like I should have saw that coming, but it definitely caught me by surprise. So that's, the whole thing with the kind of surprise attack definitely caught me. Like, I was just like, oh, whoa. I mean, because I was getting into where they were going. If you remember that scene correctly,
sure.
Like there was something fun about to happen, and then it just got really serious and awful. So I think maybe their clever writing did what it was supposed to do for me at that point. But
the big thing to me is Daenerys and the imp who's is it Tywin Lannister and
yes.
Jon Snow could meet face to face in the next episode. And
it seems like that's the direction that they're going, and I have to wonder. See, so this is where I'm at. I don't know, and especially because we're out of the books of
right.
George R. Martin. This is HBO writers have essentially taken over. So I don't know. I think I had an idea of who was going to sit on the Iron Throne before, but now I feel like I've been thrown off kilter a little bit, so I don't know who ultimately will end up sitting there. I think the direction of the show will be to go to the fact that it'll never be completely settled. It'll always be a game of thrones, right? And it's an infinite game with no end, so there's always going to be jostling. But right now, I don't have a good feel for who ends up on it. Right? I mean,
so do we know? I mean, I hate to break it down to how many seasons are left, but this is not the final season.
No, there's one season left, right? Like, so after this season, I think this one is going to have 7 episodes, and the next season is going to have 6, right? And I think the next season, the episodes are going to be a little bit longer, but the next season isn't coming for, a year and a half to 2 years after this one ends, right? Like, so get your film now. So they're going to have to squeeze a lot in, but, point being, and that's a lot of time because we're talking, we have 5, so we have 11 episodes really left. So a lot can happen in that amount of time, and they're moving. Something pretty devastating happens in at least the first 2 episodes to this point. So, and if they stay consistent along the way, then we may be whittled down pretty quickly to, your last 2 or 3 major players, and, it may be a surprise as to who's left, right? Like, because I also don't know the bloodlines, and, if this person dies, then does this bring someone up that we weren't thinking of? I don't know.
The other part that I love, though, and I have become a huge fan of Arya Stark when she avenged her family from the Red Wedding in episode 1.
In episode 1.
And now
right, yeah.
she's heading home. And I honestly, I mean, as goofy as this is, when, so she believed her whole family was dead and her whole goal was to, kill Cersei and avenge the family in King's Landing. And boy, I sound like a nerd. But now she finds out that her half-brother is in control. Her sister is alive, and she's heading home.
I don't know if she knows her sister is alive, and I don't know if she knows her sister. No, I don't think. I think he just told her that her brother was the king of the north. I don't think he actually. I can't remember. Yeah, it should.
Right.
Watched it, but I can't remember.
I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, now the other part is that her brother's not going to be there when she gets there, conceivably, right?
Potentially not.
Right. I mean, if he's headed to King's Landing and she's probably not that far away.
He's headed to Westeros he's headed to meet with Daenerys. King's Landing is where. This is how confusing that show is.
Right. He's going to the Dragon Island. Sorry. And
it's great though. This is what we can correct each other on. No, wait. Which kingdom is he going to?
Yes, my Game of Thrones geography is a little bit off. I do apologize, but what's crazy is the people who know this shit inside and out. Which is just like they're good references, but you also kind of want to ask like, what is wrong? What went wrong in your life that this is actually a possibility?
Fair enough, but
that you know all this.
I am really enjoying where it's going. I'm kind of with you that the last season I was on board, but a little bit.
I was too committed, right? Like at that point, I was too committed to like bail on it. I just, I wanted to have a little faith that it was going to pick up, and it has. It's a little bit different, and I think sometimes, there's almost a feel that it may be a little bit rushed, but I think that's only because things were happening so slow in the last two seasons. It seems like that anytime anything happens, it's just like, oh man, and then if you have two major things that happen in one show, then it's just like too much too fast, and I need a nap.
And that's the thing about it though. That show has so many moving parts that you just don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And and that's what I love about it.
Right, and critics can jump in and attack any one of those moving parts, right? Like people, the big thing about this episode was criticizing the love affair between the assistant and Grey Worm. Like, okay, I guess, yeah, sure. I mean, it was a 4-minute scene, and I guess it's 4 minutes too long, and maybe they could have used 2 of those minutes to talk more about Daenerys. But I mean, to be honest, we've heard plenty from Daenerys, So I don't really have an issue. There's nothing there. I mean, I think they're doing a good job of kind of like, hey, remember all this stuff that was going on, and tying it all back together. Where like the last couple of years, like they literally, the one brother who's a 3-eyed raven. I mean, he did make a pretty substantial, or he made an appearance in the first episode. We didn't see him in the second one, but I mean, there was an entire season where we didn't even see him. So I mean, I think they are trying to make a better effort of, bringing things back together, and tying up loose ends so that the story makes sense, and you're not sitting there saying, "Hey, whatever happened to what the fuck?"
I'm enjoying it. I really.
Yeah, I am too.
When Arya said she's heading back north, or showed that she might be heading back north, the idea of her getting back home and being received is so. It's way more.
Isn't it heartwarming?
Yes, it is.
So heartwarming.
Look, I love that kid. That kid is literally the definition of a baby-faced assassin.
You'd adopt her if you could, wouldn't you, Jim?
I would definitely give her a meal and send her on her way with my blessing. Yes, I like when she annihilated those dudes. When she annihilated that whole room full of people under the guise of their leader in episode 1, and I didn't pick up on it until it was over. I was just like, this is fucking great. All right, let's. This is going bizarre.
Well,
go ahead.
Anyway, well, that's as conversations with you have a tendency to do.
Well, that's why we do this.
Speaking of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
And heavy is the crown on the king. We got a little situation in Cleveland with the king. LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. Apparently, Kyrie Irving is looking for a separation of powers. Wants to, be his own star. Wants to be the guy. Wants to step from out of the shadow of LeBron James. Kind of just a big blow that came in late at the end of last week, over the course of the weekend. Kyrie pretty much has gone into the Cavs and Dan Gilbert and demanded a trade and saying he doesn't want to play, with LeBron James anymore. And, it's something that's caught LeBron James off guard. It's just a strange situation. The Cavs have signed Derrick Rose. That happened today. It's just such an odd situation. Kyrie had done very little in the league before LeBron got there. Like he was a solid player with a lot of potential. You could tell that he had all-star potential. He was starting to show the clutch gene a little bit late in games, but they didn't win enough games where that even mattered. They were never even in contention of the playoffs before LeBron came back to the Cavs. And Kyrie was on that team for 2 or 3 seasons. Before LeBron made the decision to come back. And so LeBron comes back, and Kyrie has been to 3 straight finals, and he, got hurt in the first, was the one who delivered, one of the major daggers, right, one of the major daggers in the second, and we just didn't have enough firepower in the third for the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and the whole crew. And now Kyrie is saying, yeah, that's good enough for me. I'm going to go do it on my own. Kind of like a Kobe Bryant wanting to do it without Shaq,
right,
sort of deal. And I think it's remarkable. Not in a good way for the Cavs or Kyrie, really. I mean, it's just interesting the psyche of some of these guys. You kind of want to banish him, right? And be pissed at him and just like, you selfish son of a bitch, why can't you just, we got a good thing going here. But at the same time, kind of wanting to go out on his own and see what he can do in leading a team. And he knows, which is a good sign, by the way, that LeBron probably isn't going anywhere, right? There's a lot of talk about LeBron leaving after this year. Kyrie was signed for the next
3
years.
I thought it was 2.
Yeah. I think it's 2. Yeah. So he's been with LeBron. Yeah, 3. So he signed a 5-year deal that summer before LeBron came back. So he had another 2 years on his deal. He's already asking to be traded. I think and he's saying that, he wants to get out of LeBron's shadow. My initial thought is I think that's a sign that LeBron is going to stick around. Although some would say that he knows that LeBron is leaving, so he wants out before LeBron has a chance to leave, and leaves him kind of holding the bag. He'd rather be the good guy. He'd rather be the good guy now as opposed to after the fact, so it doesn't look like he's bailing because LeBron left.
Kyrie to me is a stud. I mean, I'd say a top 10 player in the league. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, so.
He's not quite.
It's arguable. It's arguable because there's so many good players in the league, believe it or not. But yeah, he's definitely a top 10, at least top 15 player. I would take him on my team any day.
And he's a playmaker, right? He's a point guard who can take it to the hole. He's not quite Iverson, but he's in that ballpark, and he can shoot. And not that Iverson couldn't, but Iverson was not a great shooter. I think Kyrie has the potential to be an Iverson-like centerpiece for a team. And I'm a little, I don't want to say annoyed. I'm disappointed that this is coming up now, because I would really love to see this team stick together for one more year and, go after another title. And even if the whole thing falls apart next year, I don't think I would be upset. I don't think anyone in Cleveland would be upset. If if this team gets to the finals for a fourth straight year and wins again, hopefully, or even if they don't, even if the juggernaut that is the Warriors knocks them off, LeBron did what he said. He brought a title to Cleveland. That year, that season was so amazing, so much fun. And if the whole thing falls apart after that, I'll be disappointed. I think a lot of people will. But I don't know that I'll be that. I don't think I'll point fingers or be that upset.
All right, here's the deal. Let me stop you. I don't listen. I think Kyrie is a very good to damn near great player. Right? He can be a little bit of a liability on defense, and he goes through some crazy cold spurts at not the great times. But he's a solid team player. Sorry.
What's going on over there?
My computer just jumped on.
Okay.
Some commercial for the U.S. Army.
Okay.
So that being said, listen, if the Cavs can make the right trade, they finally got a general manager in place. They just put the assistant. They hired
right.
The assistant
They promoted him. Yeah.
David. Yeah, they promoted him into David Griffin's spot. If they can turn this from a negative into a good thing, and they get a haul, they get two guys that can you get a starter, and you get a solid bench player that can come in and impact the team every time that they're on the floor, to replace a little bit of what we're losing. To also obviously fill what you have there, Kyrie. I think that you can be okay. I think that if they take care of Derrick Rose, they manage his minutes. You get somebody behind him who can come in and play decent minutes behind him, so he doesn't take of a beating and he's ready for the playoffs. And they buy into a team system, especially like they're gonna have to become a better defensive team now. Because you just aren't going to have the firepower that you had there before. I think there's a chance that with LeBron on your team, this team can still probably get to the final. Even with everything that's happened in the East, especially with Paul George leaving and going west. Even with Hayward going to the Celtics, which the Celtics are like, hey, we have our great white hype. Okay, well, you still don't have LeBron. Right? I mean, LeBron's just that good where until you show me that you have Kawhi Leonard or Kevin Durant and Steph Curry or, Westbrook and someone on that high of a level, then I just...
Oh, I don't sweat the Celtics at all.
Right. I think that the Avs can still make it out of the East if they play things... If they do this right, they trade him, they get a solid starter in, and then they get a solid bench player, and then the bench player may be more important than the starter. This team can still make a run.
Steve, if they can get a couple of years of first-round draft picks, because one thing the Cavs have done is sold their draft for the present. If you can get the Knicks draft pick for next year and the year after, I'm expecting those to probably be lottery picks.
It's true.
So,
absolutely.
I'm okay with. I hate to see Kyrie go. I think he's a good guy, and he's a stud as a player. I love his ability to take it to the hole and.
But we also agree that he's gone, right?
It seems like he wants out, and they will get nothing for him if they wait. So. Probably,
if they wait until after this year, they'll get nothing for him because everybody will say, "We'll just wait till he's a free agent." And try
look what we gave up to get. Look what we gave up to get Kevin Love, and he was in a contract year.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. We have a GM now. We'll let the GM do his job.
Yeah. I mean, we were in a little bit different situation given having LeBron changes a lot of things for you. But yet, I just no. Hey, there's one thing I do want to bring up. One thing Did you see what happened with the coach at Ole Miss, Hugh Freeze, and why he resigned?
I heard people talking about it. I know
apparently Coach Freeze liked to call in companionship, on the road and home and other places, and he got busted. So, the old escort service strikes again.
I literally heard, was it Tommy Tuberville? Was he the former Ole Miss coach? Or do I have the wrong old school coach who's now a broadcaster? I was driving home last week and I heard him talking about how things were at Ole Miss. It's Mississippi State or Ole Miss?
This is Ole Miss.
Okay. And how they weren't a top end SEC school, but they were still a solid. So he got caught hiring companionship.
Yep.
That's never a good look for a football coach.
My thing goes back to this. These guys, he's married, kids, that whole thing, so there's a moral aspect, but I don't necessarily have a problem with it, right? Like, there's the fact that, it's bad and you're married and everything else, so, okay, fine, moral outrage, blah. Do I think that him ordering escorts impacts his ability to coach a team? No, I don't. But you have to understand that the optics of it will get you fired or will force you to resign, right? You'll have to go through the whole, I'm so sorry, I don't know what was wrong, I'm a sexaholic, and all the other bullshit that you throw out there. It stuns me how these guys continue to think that they can just get away with, the dumbest things. Like, listen, I'm not going to reprimand this guy because he
wanted to get laid.
The action itself, right? Like, I'm not gonna reprimand him for that. What I'm gonna reprimand him for is, listen, if you want to get laid, then you're gonna have to do it a better way than hiring escorts, and especially like calling them on the phone or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to figure out a better way to do it than that. It's just, it's been. Listen, this has gotten politicians, it's gotten coaches in all sports, it's gotten a number of high-profile men time and time again. And you can't do it. Like, here's the thing, but it's tough because what gets these guys in trouble is the illegality of the whole escort thing, right? If you're just unfaithful, it depends, right? It's almost not as bad, but it's not as bad from a legal standpoint, but it's the same immoral sort of behavior that people can't condone, and then the donor, this is the type of guy that we want leaving their kids, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada.
Meanwhile, every college football program is having their recruits walked around campus with a hottie under university submission or permission.
Yes. Right. They go out of their way to find the girls that they deem the cutest to go and greet these guys when they walk off the bus, and they make sure that they sit the guys right by the cheerleaders and all this other stuff. So the hypocrisy there is very interesting. But I'm not saying that he shouldn't have resigned or shouldn't have been fired had it gotten to that, or any of the coaches that have been let go because the school didn't want to deal with their, with
transgressions,
their
right?
Right, with their transgressions. But come on, guys, you just have to be better than this. You just have to be able to make better fucking decisions, right? Like, I'm sure Hugh Freeze, how many times did he tell his guys about decision making and thinking smart on and off the field, and this is all you got to think about team and all that other coach speak and crap that they throw out there. Meanwhile, he walks out of the locker room after that, picks up his phone, and is texting 1-800-HOT-HOOKER to have somebody come to his room after practice. Like, come on.
This episode of Whiskey Congress brought to you by hothooker.com.
Hothooker.com will serve you anywhere you are in the country. Don't you forget it.
As long as you're not a college football coach.
Tried and shoe by your own. No.
Steven. You son of a bitch. All right, dude, we got to wrap this up. Let's go ahead and wrap
it up.
But I do want to say one thing real quick. Kat Timpf, who's a regular on Fox News, had some asshole walk in, dump a bottle of water on her, and throw it in her face. I've interacted with her on my personal account on Twitter over the years. She and I don't agree on a lot of things, but that was.
Jim, quick question:
yeah.
How much has she interacted back with you?
Oh yeah, we've texted back and forth.
Oh, okay.
I can produce the text or tweets. But she and I have goofed around a little bit. I don't think she fantasizes about me, but this guy literally showed up at an event and attacked her, and I tweeted out and told her on my personal account and on Whiskey Congress that while I may not agree with a lot of things she said, I think she's intellectually honest, and she is usually funny, and she's damn cute. But most importantly, some douchebag walked up and dumped a bottle of water on her, and as assaults go, it's not the worst, but it is still just kind of gross. And
well, I tell you what, I think that this is the sort of thing. So Catherine Timpf for Fox, she's conservative. She leans conservative, but part of the reason why she's on Fox, and people, no one knows why this guy did this. He didn't say why he did it. The assumption is because she worked for Fox, because she's a libertarian, because she has conservative views. He was just so frustrated that he had to throw water on her. It's kind of it's a bitch. It's not kind of. It's a very bitch move on his part. But at the same time, it is scary because if you're close enough to throw water on someone, on their head and in their face, then you're close enough to do a lot more serious damage.
Right.
And the fact that someone would be willing to get that close to her, to do that to her, is scary. We just had a situation where, the guy walked onto the softball field and, tried to take out, some of our...
The majority whip,
right.
It was actually baseball.
Right. I think that, we need to just kind of be cognizant of these conversations around politics and what they mean. We definitely want to make sure that we're pushing the conversation forward and that we have passion about what we believe, but don't let that passion turn into uncontrolled emotion to where you not only say something stupid, but you do something stupid. This was someone who got emotional and did something stupid. Fortunately, she didn't get hurt, and there needs to be a lesson learned from this. He needs to pay a price. But we've seen too many times where people overreact, whether they have mental health issues or not, and it goes much, much worse. So, don't get caught up in your emotions, caught up in your feelings, as they say. Have passion about something, but know where to draw the line, so that we have a civil discourse when we have these conversations.
And that's where I was hoping you would go is, let's have conversations. Let's discuss things like adults and be reasonable and logical and try to understand where we're coming from. And sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we won't. But at least let's be reasonable, rational humans, not, this psycho who shot the majority whip, or this asshole who dumped a bottle of water on Kat Timpf's, head. You're not accomplishing anything other than...
Listen, just make sure, Jim, when some, conservative head case comes up and kicks Michael Smerconish right in the nuts, that you are just as supportive of him.
I will be just as supportive of Michael Smerconish. Now,
you better talk about how shiny his bald head is, too.
Okay, I will do that. Now, if someone kicks Andrew Wilkow in the nuts, I might go silent.
Equally unacceptable. As just as equally unacceptable. So,
it may be unacceptable, but there's limits to my.
Listen.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Listen, good talk, my man. Appreciate you accommodating me. It's been a crazy, this whole summer is flying by. It feels like, every time we get together, we both have just a laundry basket and a suitcase behind us. Because, we're constantly on the move, constantly on the road, but I appreciate your dedication to making sure that we're able to, record on a weekly basis and the effort that you put in on the back end. So just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that I was grateful for that.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. I enjoyed talking to you tonight, as always, and we'll get this out there, and I'll be back, actually talking to you from Buffalo next time, so we'll be doing another state-to-state thing.
Another road show. All right, man. Well, take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you guys all soon.
Thanks, Steven. Good night.